When is inclusion and diversity and equity bad words? Isn't that the foundation of every society? Forget the terminology of, because I think that becomes provocative in itself, and it's being used to make other people feel disenfranchised. So, I think equality of opportunity, different voices, different audiences, different perspectives is imperative for us to feel heard, feel seen. That's about everybody.
Hello and welcome to Ways to Change the World. I'm Krishnan Guru-Murthy, and this is the podcast in which we talk to extraordinary people about the big ideas in their lives and the events that have helped shape them. We're on location today at the National Theatre because my guest is the new director and co-CEO of the National Theatre, Indhu Rubasingham, and she's just announced her first season of productions. It's very varied and quite exciting. Indhu, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Hi.
So you've got an empty stage. How are you going to change the world with it?
It's an incredible opportunity. The stage is an incredible opportunity, and the National is an incredible platform. What I love about theatre is that it's a collective experience. It brings people together to hopefully empathise and engage in debate as well as being entertained. And that's what I think when you say, how do you change the world, is if we can just become more empathetic to the other and to different voices and different perspectives.
You've run theatres before, but the National is different, isn't it?
Oh, it's hugely different, yes.
Just explain why.
Why is the National different? It sits on the South Bank, on the river, physically sits between the Houses of Parliament and St Paul's Cathedral. So literally sits between church and state. So therefore, sort of as a metaphor, is important for national discourse.
So how are you doing it with your first programme?
It's about having as varied a programme as possible. So like what I really love about the first two shows I'm doing Shakespeare, Hamlet, and Hamlet opened this theatre in 1963, so it's honouring the history. And then I'm doing a play in the Olivier Theatre, our biggest space, and it's The Bacchae by Euripides, and it's this play about chaos and order and that collision. It's been adapted by Nima Talagani, and it's his debut play. So I'm putting on a debut play to open the season.
Is that a risk?
Theatre's always about taking risk, because we shouldn't know what is going. If we can predict what's going to happen, then the most exciting things we may miss. So
he's a very well-known actor now.
Yes,
but as a playwright, as you say, this is. it's a big.
It's a big
debut.
It's a big debut, yeah.
So how important is it to sort of sprinkle that stardust?
It's always going to be about quality. Paul Mescal is going to be in two productions, a quality leading actor and a brilliant theatre actor. And Leslie Manville, is one of our great British actors of all time. So it's they want to play at the National. So it's important to be bringing them in as well as people making their debuts. There are a number of actors making their debuts as well.
So what do you think? You said that the National is about bringing in as many voices as you can. More broadly, in 2025, what's this theatre for in a world in which we're all staring at screens?
Theatre, that live act of storytelling is you can't replicate it in any other form. I think that shared experience, that collective experience of being with people, watching and engaging in a live performance, is an experience that people are craving. It's not like, in the last year, ticket sales are huge, that have really jumped. The West End is doing really well. We're in a really buoyant sort of climate.
Why do you think that is?
Because people want the live experience. People want to have that, yes.
What is different about the live experience that we perhaps didn't appreciate before we were all spending hours a day staring at screens?
It's why do we want to see Beyonce in concert? There's something about that live what I love about theatre, it's like a secular church. So it brings people together. It brings us watching the actor on stage who's transforming us, who's telling a story, who's acting like the priest or the and we in the most amazing experience, we are transformed. We are told a story, something has changed, we've understood something, we've gone on a collective experience that is amplified because it's shared.
When did you realise that that's what theatre is?
When I was 16 or 17, and I saw The Normal Heart by Larry Kramer at Nottingham Playhouse. And it was the first time I'd ever seen a political piece of theatre and it was about the AIDS crisis. It was about, and it was such a passionate, angry play. And I remember just being moved to tears, and it making me write and making me think in a way that I hadn't, even though we'd all known about it and we'd watched the news or whatever, it viscerally hit me to make me understand something that I was so far removed in my little town in Mansfield. And that experience, that visceral experience of making me understand what it was like, was something that I don't think any other form could have given me.
So in this very noisy, bitter, angry world that we're in at the moment, how does your slate address those things? Because you might look at the list and go, well, it's quite traditional. There's a bit of sort of Greek mythology, a bit of Shakespeare, a bit of celebrity. Are you going to be hitting big themes?
Wow. There's a lot of new plays in there because we didn't talk about, and musicals. And can I just go back and answer? It's what we've heard is one programme, but it's about what's going to keep coming. And I think in this time of such turmoil and fear in the world, it's the art. We're going to need artists more than ever. Artists are going to help us understand what's going on, and being able to give those stories are going to be even more relevant and important to help us understand the chaos that we're in.
How do because quite often now you'll go to the theatre and you'll notice the bigger themes around power or dictatorship, or you go and see the score with at the Haymarket at the moment. You suddenly go, oh, this is about Putin. It's not really about King Frederick. So are you very conscious when you're putting stuff on that you are actually addressing much bigger themes and current themes?
Yeah, and not all the time. You program for a variety of reasons, because you have to entertain. We also have to find a place. All of it has to be entertaining, fundamentally, and people have to come away. They want to go to theatre to escape something as well as to engage in something. The themes, theatre, what we want in theatre has to reflect the world in some way, or refract the world in some way. And that could be because you're telling a historic play, but it's bringing in resonance, as you mentioned, or we're absolutely, I'm commissioning what I call state of the world plays that really look at issues that are pertinent to who we are now. And also,
what do you mean by state of the world play?
Plays that look at really big issues around identity, immigration, things that affect the whole world as opposed to just this country. And it could be around technology, it could be around AI, all these things that we're all talking about that has got much bigger global ramifications.
If you look across the pond, Donald Trump is having quite a big impact on theatre. He's taken over the Kennedy Center. He's become the chairman of it. He's scrapped the board. He's effectively taking over the slate of what they're going to be putting on. Mm. What do you think of that?
What I really love about here in England, in Britain, is the arm's length principle, and that the government has an arm's length relationship to arts and culture, so that no government, our funding comes through the Arts Council. And so it means that we're independent of any political party that comes in. I think that's really important to keep the independence of the artist alive and kicking.
Does that mean that you end up with a massive liberal bias in theatre?
What I think is really crucial in theatre is that we have as many polarised voices in there trying to have a conversation. We need conversations. We need bigger conversations. And I think that's what's important about a national theatre, is that it represents as many of those different voices. So it shouldn't be, a great piece of theatre shouldn't be telling you what to think. It shouldn't be championing a particular perspective. It should be provocative and provoking questions and asking you to make for the answers, not telling you the answers. That's what I think is really exciting.
But do you think there is a liberal bias? I mean, surely there is, isn't there? If you think about the kinds of people who come into theatre and theatre management and the arts in general.
I think the role of the artist is always going to stand outside. Outside establishment, outside, that.
So there's going to be an anti-establishment bias.
There's not. They're not necessary. But the role of the artist is to be observant and to comment and to not, to be able to. That's why countries. When countries want to control the dialogue and the discourse, often it's the artists that who are the first to go.
Yes, I mean, historically, artists have always relied on the patronage of people in power.
Exactly, and we still do. So it's always it's a tight rope. It's a really interesting tight rope. It's not, you can't be, some of our artists are the most establishment. How many are sirs and ladies, or have been knighted, or So they're absolutely part of the establishment, but it's that standing inside one. It's almost like they have a brilliant way of standing in one foot in one camp and outside it.
How has Trump changed the conversation around what you're doing here, do you think?
What's really, really vital is how do we maintain the freedom of expression for artists, and how do we also, how do we make sure that artists are protected and the risks are allowed to be taken, and that we are allowed to be, the discourse is allowed to be critical. That's what's really important to protect. And I think seeing what's happening both in America and in other parts of the world, it feels imperative that we protect the artist's voice.
Does it feel like a frightening time?
It feels like a really important time. It feels like a time of where there's incredible responsibility and care needs to be taken. It's allowing artists and stories to live and breathe, and also make sure people don't self-censor. So that we're being provocative and we're challenging, as well as bringing everyone in. It's also a time when there's a lot of polarization, and there's a lot of separation, and communities are being divided. Every identity feels that they're under threat. And how do we remove that sense of threat and actually find ways of bringing us together? So I think it's an important vision.
I mean, his sort of backers, both in America and here, would say, the trouble is the arts is massively liberal. There's a massive bias against us. They talk about diversity, but they don't talk about the stuff that we talk about, and that's what we want to bring to the arts as well. Have they got a point?
Absolutely. I mean, it's you have to have as wide a sort of different choices and perspectives as possible. I don't totally agree that perspective isn't heard.
Well, if their perspective on immigration is not really about trying to understand the immigrant experience, but about looking at immigrants as a threat to the nation, and all of that, is that something theatre should also look at?
I think it needs to look at both sides of, an argument. Like, why do we? You can't be. The threat to immigration, the threat of immigration, or the issue of immigration, lies in the complexity of the debate. It's not one or the other, and actually it's getting into the complexity. We live in a time of we want sound bites and we want immediate answers, and we don't want to go into the nuances of an argument. And the threat of a really good play or a good story about immigration that really makes everyone want to come and see it, has to express both sides, or it has, and that actually most good plays I know has all those different voices. And what I love about really, even more recently, like in Father and the Assassin, people watch that play thinking it was a pro-Gandhi play or it was an anti-Gandhi play. A good play makes you, doesn't tell you what to think. And I did one about Margaret Thatcher, and the right wing thought it was a brilliant play about Margaret Thatcher, and the left wing thought it was a brilliant play anti-Margaret Thatcher. That's what good theatre does. It goes into a complexity. It isn't liberal into one side, or it should be a multi-layered, faceted discussion.
And can you bring in audiences here from different views, or are we becoming so polarized that, people tend to go in tribes? Can you see the stuff you're putting on really bringing in people from all sides? I mean, it's a good pitch, but it's quite hard to deliver in reality, isn't it?
I don't think it is. I think you give a good story, you give a good hook, or whatever the reason, whatever the hooks are. That's what's amazing about here is like you get people from around the country, around the world that want to come into these spaces, and not from one. You've got over 1,000 seats to fill, and they sell out with the right kind of story. Which we've got on Dear England at the moment, and people who've never been to the theatre, football fans from around the country are coming, and you're watching fathers and sons and people who love. So it's what story you're telling that brings them in, and that's what's great about here. Is that it does it's you build it, they will come if it's the thing that they want to come and see.
And when you look at what's happening in America, from a national theatre perspective, do you have one eye on that, thinking, "Oh, we're not that far away from that," from that here. We could be looking at a Nigel Farage government in 5 years' time with a very similar approach to these sorts of things. And a very and a pretty scathing critique of the arts and what they regard as bias within it.
Listen, like I said, I will fight passionately. For the arm's length principle, that's really important. But B, that arts isn't just about being liberal or not liberal. That arts is imperative to our society, the culture, and it's the right of every young person to have access to arts and cultural subjects, and actually, and also for a society that has equality of opportunity. It isn't about partisan politics. It's about expression. It's about community. It's about society, and it's about how we come together. And that's what I would always fight for. We as a society, as a world, as culture, right from the birth of dawn, we've always gathered to tell stories, to try and understand something. And it's trying to understand whether it's something about ourselves or something about the world we live in. And it's really important to fight for that. And it's really important to challenge any cuts and reduction of that's going into our education system.
If I look at the names that you've put on your first season, it's very much not, the old white public school establishment. Is that a sort of I'm assuming it's deliberate.
It's not, no, actually, can I just take that? Everyone is welcome, and I'm sure that, I don't want to name names because it might be insulting to call them old public school establishment, but I think some of the people that you think of that are in that season, but it's about lots of talent and also talent that deserves to be part of the mainstream. The phrase I've coined is the modern mainstream. That's what I want this.
What is that?
That is like, I think all different types of stories and performers and stuff deserve to be part of the mainstream, because our mainstream is a much more wider thing than the establishment you were talking about. Our mainstream are the young people in Lewisham or the people in America, or the Chinese students, or our mainstream is made up of so many different communities that have a right to this, building the stories that we want to tell.
What have you learned along the way before you got here about that? What's the sort of...
I've learned that people want to see a really, really good story, and and it's not, I think sometimes we go, oh, we need to tell this story for this community, we need to tell this story for that community. Actually, you tell a story that's well made and interesting and about the human condition. It's for everybody, and that's what I'm really interested in. It's how those stories from a different perspective becomes part of the conversation.
The other thing that's really under attack at the moment is equity, diversity and inclusion, or DEI. They do it the other way around in America. How important do you think it is for institutions like this to still try to address inequality and diversity?
I think it's the foundation of who we are, and what, forget the terminology of, because I think that becomes provocative in itself, and it's being used as a hammer on certain things, and it's being used to make other people feel disenfranchised. So I think equality of opportunity, different voices, different audiences, different perspectives is imperative for us to feel heard, feel seen, and that includes that's about everybody. And the minute someone feels othered or outside is when we're not being representative of a national theatre.
Just explain what you mean by how you think it's being used to disenfranchise people. What do you mean by that?
Sorry, but I mean it's being.
It's a good point. So I just want you to lay it out.
It's been coined as a negative. If you talk about the phrases, when is inclusion and diversity and equity bad words? Isn't that the foundation of every society? Doesn't that go back to the founding fathers of democracy? Isn't that what democracy is about? That everyone is included in being able to vote and decide who governs us. So the reason when we say EDI or it's being used where that's being banned, I sort of that's why I'm saying it's being used as a tool or being used to hammer. None of those words are bad,
and yet some people think it excludes them.
Yes, exactly. So that's why, because of how it's being used, and I think that when you say about here the inclusion, everyone needs to feel included.
I mean, you had a pretty unusual entry into this world, didn't you? I suppose. Well, a bit like me, you were expected to be a doctor, and then suddenly you decided, oh, this is fun. Let's do that instead.
Yeah.
A lot, it's quite difficult to do that, isn't it? Tell me, how did you become a theatre director?
It was so my parents came over from Sri Lanka, immigrants from Sri Lanka, and I think their hope from family in the community was to be a doctor or a lawyer, and
as all good Asian kids,
all good Asian families, and the really annoying thing was I was quite good at sciences, and I didn't want to be, and through a really random opportunity that I was given at school, I got access into a theatre, and there was something about the world that I found really magical and kind of extraordinary. So I just got a bit obsessed by it. I was doing science A-levels, wanted to do a drama degree. You needed English A-level, had to finish those A-levels and get another A-level in English in order to go to university. Sort of begged my parents to let me go and do a drama degree, and then slowly and then I started my degree and felt like I wanted to follow in your footsteps and become a journalist. And then just by
we're about the same age.
I know I wasn't following my footsteps. I know, but I was like, I didn't mean it like that. But I was like, I was going to be like you. Yeah. I was going to. You never know. What might have happened. But then in my second year, I made myself direct to play. Don't know why, but I made myself direct to play, and that's when I felt like the sort of the science side of me and the art side, the creative side, sort of found a place. And did everything I could to try and understand what that might mean as a profession.
And so what would you advise people now?
I really would advise people to follow their passion, because the job security of the stable job market, we don't know how that's going to change with the global currents, with AI, all of those things. So what you can do is do what you really, really excites you, what makes you passionate, what makes you get out of bed in the morning. That's what I would really advise young people to do.
Indhu Rubasingham, thank you very much indeed. You can watch all of these interviews on the Channel 4 News YouTube channel. Our producer is Vic Patel. Until next time, bye-bye.